Some of you are already mad. I get it. I do. Just give me a minute. Let me explain what this video is about, and I promise you, you'll be madder. But that's okay, because the people that you disagree with will be mad as well. So yeah, I'm gonna get it from both sides today. This was a great idea. So look, I'm gonna talk about Donald Trump for just a second, but not like, Trump, but like, Trump, just the guy, the person, the human being. And that person, I mean, he's weird, right? He wears long-ass ties that got those specific mannerisms, that weird dance. Do you know anybody else with hair like that? He doesn't drink, he refuses to exercise, he says crazy stuff that you could never get away with. He buried his ex-wife on his golf course. You don't do those things? You don't know anybody else that does those things. Merriam-Webster defines the word weird as being, quote, of strange or extraordinary character. I mean, regardless of how you feel about the guy, the word applies, right? But that weirdness is something that Trump shares with a lot of world leaders. They've all got these little quirks and obsessions that are just a little more out there, I mean, there's a reason why some people act like the elites are like another species or something. And yet they have massive followings, millions of people who vote for them and evangelize for them, who put them in these positions of power. And I guess what I'm interested in finding out is why? Why these guys? Why do weirdos rise to power? Or to put it another way, is it the power that makes them weird, or the weird that makes them powerful? I find that to be a very interesting question, and it touches on a lot of like psychology and social science and, just attraction. Like, what is it we are attracted to? So today we're going to look at some of the weirdest world leaders and ask the question of, how did they weird their way to the top? In the musical movie Love, Love, My Love, a poor woman falls in love with an upper-class man. This man is then sent away to become a government official, but while he's away, a corrupt governor puts the woman in jail. And the man returns just before she's about to be executed. He saves her life, and they proclaim their love to each other. Just another meet-cute movie. It was a huge hit when it was released. And yet you have probably never heard of it. That's because it was released in North Korea, and it was made by a director who had been kidnapped to make it. Love, Love, My Love was one of 7 movies made by the filmmakers Shin Sang-ok and his wife Choi Yun-hee while living in North Korea in the 1980s. But they didn't go there out of their own free will. Kim Jong-il at the time was the head of North Korea's propaganda and agitation department, and he was obsessed with movies. Can we just sit with the fact that they actually called it the propaganda and agitation department? Just putting it right out there. Like, it's been reported that he owned up to 20,000 films in his collection, like that kind of obsession. But he didn't like the type of movies that his own country was making. He wanted something more like the Hollywood movies that he loved so much. So, he did the obvious thing. He kidnapped a South Korean director duo and forced them to make movies for him. Like you do. And this went on for 10 years, until 1986 when they managed to escape their handlers at the Venice Film Festival. So even though his dad was still the ruler, Kim Jong-il was, already a pretty powerful figure in North Korea, and he wanted to use these movies to help create a more positive view of his country. Obviously, Kim Jong-il eventually became the leader of North Korea, and when he did, his experience in propaganda and agitation came in quite handy. According to just some of the propaganda that came out from his regime, a new star appeared in the sky on the day he was born, along with a double rainbow, somehow. That apparently while he was at college, he wrote 1,500 books and 6 operas. That he's a fashion icon. That his suit, which he designed, is the most popular suit in human history. Famously, that the first time he ever played golf, he hit a 38 under par with 11 holes in one. And of course that he doesn't defecate. Because he has no anus. He's just that good at digesting things. Now those things, I think, are not true. The movie thing was true. He literally had over 20,000 DVDs and VHS tapes. But that wasn't the only weird thing about him. For one thing, he refused to fly. He had a luxury rail car that he traveled everywhere in. In fact, he actually died on that train car while he was on a trip. He even took that train all the way to Moscow for a meeting in 2001, and the Russian envoy that traveled with him had some interesting stories to tell. Like apparently he ate donkey meat. That was just his thing. Yet supposedly he had donkey meat and lobsters flown to his train car every day. He wouldn't fly, but he would have his food flown to him. And he insisted on using the same silver chopsticks at every meal. And that he washed every meal down with Hennessy cognac. A lot of it. Apparently he was one of the world's biggest buyers of Hennessy. Very weird, very drunk, very small man. Idi Amin. This guy was a piece of work. Idi Amin ruled Uganda from 1971 to 79, and he earned the name the Butcher of Uganda for his popular cuts of fine choice sirloin served with down-home goodness from his neighborhood butchery. No, it was people. He was butchering people, like a psychopath. His reign was marked by purges of non-native citizens and political violence against any of his perceived opponents. He actually created an entire torture industry that led to the deaths of 100 to 300,000 people. One of the torture palaces actually had an electrified moat around it, and evidently, many prisoners chose to just jump into that electrified moat to escape the torture. There was a line in an article that I read that I've just got to read it out loud. So it said, quote, "His rule became so synonymous with killing that when the capital's lights went dark, the outages were rumored to be the result of corpses discarded in the waterways blocking the hydropower plant." Damn. He famously claimed to be the rightful heir to the Scottish throne, somehow, and declared himself the last king of Scotland. There was a movie about him with that title. Back home in Uganda, his official title that he gave himself was His Excellency President for Life, Field Marshal Al-Haji Dr. Idi Amin, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea. He would openly mock the Queen of England and request that she send him her knickers. And he once challenged the president of Tanzania to a boxing match, which he said he would do with one hand tied behind his back. He had 6 different wives, some of them at the same time, and a couple of which died from mysterious causes. And between those 6 wives, and God knows how many mistresses, he sired up to 60 kids. Some have put it as high as 60, he listed 46 in his will. If you're wondering how he had enough stamina for all that siring, apparently it was oranges. He thought that oranges were an aphrodisiac, so he ate like 40 of them a day. But to his credit, one thing he didn't eat was human flesh. He said it was too salty. These are not things normal people do. Certified weirdo. Fidel Castro was obsessed with milk. After he took over Cuba, he was all about the revolution, and he never really stopped revolutioning for the next 50 years. That's why he always wore that military outfit. And a big part of the revolution for him, for some reason, was milk. He seemed to think that, milk was a sign of a country's strength. Like, if a country was producing a lot of milk, that country was healthy and prosperous. So it was really important to the revolution for Cuba to have the best dairy industry in the world, thus proving, of course, that communism was a superior political system. Logic. So the first thing he did was to reform their agriculture and dairy production. And one of his little pet projects was to make the world's best Camembert cheese. There's a story in the biography that was written about him by Robert Quirk, where Castro met with a French diplomat in 1964, and he offered him some of the Cuban Camembert and asked what he thought. And the French guy was nice about it. He said it was good, said it was like the French cheese, which is pretty high praise, but Castro wanted to hear him say that Cuban cheese was better. And the French guy didn't want to say that, so he just kind of kept dancing around it like, oh no, it's good, no, it's good, But Castro kept prodding him, and eventually the diplomat just couldn't take it anymore, and he slammed his hands down on the table and said, "Never!" Then, according to Quirk, quote, he reached over and pulled a cigar from Castro's pocket. "Will you agree that there is a better cigar in the world than this? You can't beat tradition. My cheese and your cigars have centuries of experience behind them." And he then ended the meeting by saying, "Now go away or I shall taunt you a second time." He once said that he wanted Cuba to make enough milk to fill Havana Harbor with it. Thankfully, this never happened. That would have been really salty milk. The problem was that most Cuban cows were raised for beef production and not dairy. And dairy cows, Holstein cows, don't do very well in the tropical heat. So he started a program to breed a super cow, a hybrid that could both take the heat while making more milk than any other cow in the world. And 15 years later, they finally succeeded. With one cow. Yeah, they did manage to breed one cow that made an insane amount of milk. It actually broke the world record by making 110 liters of milk in one day and over 24,000 liters in 1 year. The cow was named Ubra Blanca, and it was kind of a celebrity while she was alive. Unfortunately, this talent for making all this milk did not pass off to her offspring, so it seems to have kind of just been a fluke. There's a statue of this cow still standing to this day. But yeah, ice cream was a big thing for him. He was known to eat up to 20 scoops after some meals. Yeah, he allegedly would have every flavor of ice cream shipped to him from a Howard Johnson's in Canada, and he made it a point of national pride to come up with more ice cream flavors than the United States. By the way, the CIA knew that, and they even tried to assassinate him by putting a poison pill in his milkshake. But apparently the pill was hidden in the freezer until it was needed, and it got stuck in an ice tray. and it wound up breaking up when somebody tried to pry it free, so failed. Again. Hitler. He farted. A lot. Yes, amongst his many other endearing qualities, Hitler could clear a room like no one's business. They were loud, they stank, and they happened constantly. Yeah, apparently his stomach was kind of messed up. He had stomach issues. This went all the way back to when he was a kid. This gave him stomach cramps and apparently an insane amount of gas. He was known for sometimes just kind of getting up and walking out of meetings with foreign dignitaries, apparently so that he could go fart in private. But of course, they didn't know that. They just thought he was walking out of the room as some kind of like power move or something. But yeah, in front of his own staff, he would just let him rip. And it was so bad that they apparently started calling him Der Furzer behind his back instead of Der Führer. Der Furzer means the farter. Now, having a messed up stomach isn't that weird. And it certainly wasn't his worst quality, but the way he treated it was kind of strange because he would only listen to one guy, this quack doctor named Theodore Morell. And Morell's suggestion was a high-fiber vegetarian diet, which I don't know if you've ever been on a high-fiber supplement, but that does not reduce gas. He also gave him something called Dr. Kester's anti-gas pills that were later found to contain belladonna, strychnine, and atropine, all of which are poisonous and can cause like confusion and hallucinations if it's taken in high quantities, which Hitler was taking up to 20 of these a day. But that was just the start. In the early 1940s, Morell had him taking up to 63 different types of pills every day. And even worse, he was giving him injections up to 10 times a day. And nobody in Hitler's inner circle knew what was in those injections, including Hitler. He completely trusted this guy with his life, and Morell just ran him into the ground. Like apparently, they think that what was in those injections was amphetamines, which by the end of the war, Hitler was hopelessly addicted to, and he was reduced to literal shambles, both physically and mentally. In fact, it deteriorated his decision-making so much that many people think that it actually brought an end to the war sooner than it would have if he had been, thinking clearly. Some people, including some in his inner circle, began to think that Morell was like a spy for the Allies who was like deliberately poisoning him. This was never proven, though. Saddam Hussein wrote romance novels. He's a lover and a fighter. Yes, on top of being known as the Butcher of Baghdad, Idi Amin just entered the chat, Saddam had some weird quirks and features of his own. For example, on his 60th birthday, he commissioned a copy of the Quran written in his own blood. This was super forbidden in Islam, by the way, but the calligrapher supposedly used 50 pints of his blood to write this thing, which, that sounds like a lot. He also apparently hated Fruit Loops. Yeah, after he was captured by U.S. forces, he was looked over by an Army SBC named Sean O'Shea, and he later reported that one day he ran out of Raisin Bran for him, and he served Saddam Fruit Loops. And according to O'Shea, quote, that was the only time he ever looked defeated. Dude had just been pulled out of a spider hole, but it was the Fruit Loops that caused him to look defeated. Yeah, just a few years before that, in the year 2000, Saddam published a book called Zabiba and the King, a romance novel about a relationship between a king and a commoner who was married to a cruel husband. It was published anonymously under the name He Who Wrote It. This story was a bit of an allegory. Zabiba represented the Iraqi people, and the cruel husband represented, like, toxic Western influences. And the king represented, well, you can guess who the king was. He wrote a few other books, too. One was titled Walled Fortress in 2001, Men in the City in 2002, and Get Out, You Damned One, that was published in 2005. All of those happened at the very end of his life. That, like, maybe he was focused too much on writing books. Not that there's anything wrong with writing books. That was stupid. Anyway, so at this point you're probably thinking to yourself, well, of course these guys are weird. They're all genocidal lunatics. But weirdness isn't just for dictators and authoritarians. Billionaires and titans of industry also had their share of bizarre habits. The famous Nintendo video game designer Shigeru Miyamoto had a bit of a measuring obsession. Apparently he measures everything he sees. He carries around a tape measure and he'll take a guess and then check the length of everyday objects. The tycoon Howard Hughes was famously a huge germaphobe. He would actually wear tissue boxes on his feet so that they wouldn't touch the floor. Maybe he didn't know about shoes. Richard Branson is said to drink 20 cups of tea a day to stay energized. I would do it. They say that Steve Jobs would soak his feet in company toilets to relieve stress. That's weird enough. And of course, famously, he tried to treat his pancreatic cancer with a fruit diet. And Elon Musk, well, he's perfectly normal in every way. Now, if you're the type of person who considers billionaires to be just as bad as dictators, many famous scientists and engineers also had weird preferences. Nikola Tesla would sleep in 6 20-minute intervals so he could have more hours of productivity every day. He also famously was in love with a bird at one point. Albert Einstein didn't like wearing socks. He thought they were unnecessary because shoes already protect the feet. Also the hair. He had that hair. That hair. Many celebrities rate high on the weirdo meter. Tom Cruise, super intense guy, obviously big into Scientology, but also apparently likes a facial treatment that involves mixing nightingale excrement with water and rice bran. Bird poop. He does a bird poop facial. Although to be fair, the guy's like 100 years old and he looks amazing. Victoria Beckham has apparently eaten the same meal of grilled fish with steamed vegetables every day for 25 years. At least that's what her husband says. Gwyneth Paltrow started that Goop website, and she became controversial for some of her claims, like she did goat's milk cleanses, bee sting facials, and she burned a candle that was made to smell like her, vagina. Goop indeed. And then there's Mr. Rogers. No, don't ruin Mr. Rogers. I'm not going to ruin Mr. Rogers, but he was a serial killer. I'm kidding. No, but he was obsessed with the number 143, because 143 are the number of letters in the words, I love you. To that end, he kept a strict vegetarian diet and swam every morning so that he could keep his weight at a perfect 143 pounds. What a weirdo. Another super wholesome celebrity was Bob Ross, who was known for his, happy little trees, but also that hair. That was not his real hair, by the way. He had it permed like that, and apparently he hated it. It just happened to be the style that he had when, he became big, and then he felt like he couldn't get rid of it, and it was kind of his brand at that point. Same with Gene Shalit, the film critic. He got, famous in the 70s when big fros and mustaches were a thing. Throw in those glasses and the bow tie, and the dude was just like a living Muppet. And he kept that ish going for 50 years. Dude's still alive, by the way. 99 years old. Still out there, still throwing out. This video is about weird leaders, and I'm somehow talking about Gene Shalit. I feel like I've gotten off track a little bit. Wait, no, I haven't. I haven't at all. You know why? Weird hair, weird hair, weird hair, weird hair, weird hair, weird mustache, weird hair, weird hair, weird hair, weird hair, weird hat. Also weird hat, and weird everything. For authoritarians and personality cults, weird hair and weird fashion isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's personal branding. It makes them stand out. It says to the world that they're different from you. That they don't play by the same rules as the rest of society. The rules don't apply to them. It also makes them easily recognizable, to the point that you know who they are if you just see their silhouette. And, by the way, mockable. It's easy to make jokes about, you can make an Halloween costume out of it. It gives people a reason to talk about them. And it's not just about hair and fashion, it's about speech patterns and mannerisms. These people are easy to imitate. They're memeable. This combination of easy imitation, instant recognizability, and the message that the rules just don't apply to them is very powerful. And very attractive to a lot of people. So to go back to that question at the beginning of the video, does the power make them weird or does the weird make them powerful? Being weird does help to gain power, especially when used along with some other traits that we'll get to here in a minute. But as the old adage goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there is absolutely something to that. Dr. Keltner, a psychology professor at UC Berkeley, defines power as, quote, one's ability to alter another person's condition or state of mind by providing or withholding resources, such as food, money, knowledge, and affection, or administering punishments such as physical harm, job termination, or social ostracism. All of these dictators we've talked about have altered people's conditions, and their power usually goes unchecked. And that's where the weirdness starts to seep in, or manifest itself if it's already there. Power can create a sense of freedom from society's rules, and this may lead to impulsive behavior and big risks. Power can also lead to exception making. That's the belief that the rules don't apply to you. We talked about that a second ago. This may cause those in power to be greedy or exhibit self-interested behavior. Keltner proposes a paradox about power. He says that when people gain power through behaviors like collaboration, empathy, generosity, all good things, that the moment they gain power, their brain chemistry starts to shift. They become less socially aware and more focused on personal needs. It appears that power tends to kind of allow people to freely act on their own desires and impulses. Keltner's research found that people with power acted kind of like patients who had damage to their brain's orbitofrontal lobes. When those lobes get damaged, people may become overly impulsive or exhibit insensitive behavior. It's like that story of Phineas Gage, the railroad worker back in the 1800s who had that metal bar get blasted through his head. He survived, but it damaged his frontal lobes, and everybody said that his behavior changed right after that to become less sensitive. It's almost like power can literally change your brain chemistry. Not almost like, it does. Our brains seek pleasure through dopamine hits. We are all familiar with that at this point. Dopamine activates our brain's reward center, and it gives us a sense of pleasure. Well, turns out just like you can't stop playing that game on your phone, power leads to a higher level of dopamine, and it supersizes the reward centers. When one is experiencing a lot of power, that dopamine high gets associated with a sense of personal destiny, of extreme risk-taking and emotional detachment. This can lead to an obsession with achieving goals, conquests, and ruthlessness. And since power activates your brain's reward system, that makes it addictive. People who have unchecked power usually lack self-awareness needed to act with restraint. It is an actual addiction. And withdrawing power is like withdrawing drugs from an addict. It produces the same uncontrollable cravings. So it kind of makes sense that those in power don't want to give it up willingly or smoothly. So the fact that people in power don't want to give up that power makes sense biochemically. A lot of people in power are psychopaths, actual psychopaths. In fact, psychopathy is one of the 3 traits of the dark triad. The other 2 are Machiavellianism and narcissism. While psychopathy can stand on its own in a person, it's usually paired with one of those other 2 traits. According to Dr. Kevin Dutton from Oxford University, psychopathic leaders share 8 traits. Social influence. They love the spotlight and handle themselves well in public, with many people seeing them as charismatic. Fearlessness. They say and do things that the average citizen won't. Immune to stress. They love chaos and thrive on difficulties and disputes. Machiavellian egocentrism. They're looking to make their mark on history regardless of cost. Rebellious nonconformity. They have a lack of concern about the results of their actions. And coldness. They're disconnected from sensitivity toward the suffering of others. By the way, both good and bad leaders score higher than the general public when it comes to the psychopathic personality inventory. And it's kind of the mix of these traits that will determine how successful someone will be in power. Dutton is also the author of a book called The Wisdom of Psychopath, and he says this, quote, "Someone who scores highly for being influential, fearless, and cold-hearted could be a decisive leader who can make dispassionate decisions. If those traits are accompanied by a high score on blaming others, they might be a genocidal demagogue." But there is a flip side to all this power talk. Power itself is not good or bad. It's just a tool. That's according to Stanford professor Jeffrey Pfeffer, author of the book 7 Rules of Power, which offers 7 ways that the average person can use power to their advantage. His 7 rules are 1. Get out of your own way. Overcome self-doubt and be confident. 2. Break the rules. Challenge rules and norms to stand out from others. 3. Show up in powerful fashion. Appearances matter. Be aware of how you show up to others. 4. Create a powerful brand. Build a strong reputation and surround yourself with successful people. 5. Network relentlessly. Build and nurture a network of contacts. 6. Use your power. Act quickly on your goals once you have power and don't hesitate. And 7. Understand that once you have acquired power, what you did to get it will be forgiven, forgotten, or both. Success almost always justifies past actions. Now, I'll be the first to say I don't really want some of that stuff to be true. Take that up with Jeffrey Pfeffer if you don't like it. But I do think it's important to understand how power works, which was kind of the point of this video. So back to the original idea. Did dictators and those in power arise because of their weird traits, or did the power make them weird? It's likely a bit of both. Now, growing up, I always liked being a little weird. I reveled in being different. I didn't want to be like everyone else. So, part of me kind of likes this idea that being a little weird and unconventional can, kind of be your superpower. We spend so much time worrying about fitting in and what other people think of us. We stress over that so much when really, you should just let your freak flag fly. Just, don't let it go to your head. So yes, let your freak flag fly, but maybe not online. There's a lot of people watching you there. Also, a lot of people trying to scam you and steal your data. You got phishing scams and texts and emails. You got malware from insecure sites. You've got trackers that sneak into your computer and watches your every move. The internet is a hellscape. So you basically have 2 options. 1, just completely get off the grid. Good luck with that. Or you can protect yourself like the nerds do with a service like NordVPN. Look, if you're not using a VPN, I really cannot recommend one enough in this day and age. It's kind of necessary. A VPN is a virtual private network, and what it does is it basically makes your computer look like it's not you to anybody else on the outside. And that's just a basic level of protection, but NordVPN goes way beyond that. It actually can scan your computer for hidden malware and removes it with a feature called Threat Protection. Threat Protection Pro blocks dangerous ads, it stops you from entering malware hosting websites, and it checks you're downloading files from malware. NordVPN gives you a dedicated IP so you can avoid CAPTCHAs and block lists and stuff. And it even has a dark web monitor that scans the internet and notifies you if someone's leaked your data. But let's be honest, you're mostly using it to get around content restrictions because you can make it look like you're watching from anywhere in the world. So stuff that's on Netflix in Europe but you can't see here in the US, well now you can. It's okay, I won't tell. It's super easy to install. You just press one button to turn it on, and there's 24/7 support available if somehow pressing one button is too hard for you. And here's the best part. It has a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you sign up with my link down below, you'll get some additional months for free. It's definitely better to be safe than sorry, so go check it out. NordVPN, links down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this is your first time here, I invite you to check out any of my other videos. You can look on the sidebar if you're on your computer, which apparently not a lot of you do. Watch this on your computer, a lot more on your phone and on your TVs. But anyway, check out some of my other videos. If you enjoy them, I invite you to subscribe. I come back almost every week. I'm getting better about it. Please do like and share this video if you liked it. And by the way, if you have it in you, we do have a book available. It just came out, The Book of Mysteries, The Laugh Smarter Book of Mysteries. It's available at Amazon. I'll put the link down below. Please go check it out. Anyway, I think that's it for now. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening week, stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.